Greetings mortals and welcome to a little tutorial video on distant overseas. Now I'm going to try to make this quick. Basically, distant overseas is something that refers to distantly overseas territory. So what that means is two things. First of all, it's overseas. Overseas means that you do not have a direct land connection. Okay? So anything that's directly connected by land to your capital is not overseas. Okay? The other thing is that it has to be distant, which is defined as being on a different continent. So, South America and North America are different continents. Central America is part of North America, for those who do not know. So basically, what I've got going here is a nice little illustration of what is distant overseas and what is not. So this little bits of territory here in South America are not distant overseas because they're connected all the way to my capital up in Mohawk, right here, by just little slivers of land that go the whole way. But all of the rest of this that says Midgar in South America, all of this is distant overseas. And the reason is because I don't have these little tiny bits of connective tissue. There's just like a little gap, and that little gap is enough to create an enormous overseas empire. Now, distant overseas territory is not terribly useful from an economic standpoint. It has 75% autonomy as a minimum, which means that it's only working at 25% efficacy for everything. Taxation, manpower, it's all useless. But the advantage that you have is that it's cheaper. So this territory, if you colonize distant overseas, you do not have to core it. If you colonize not distant overseas, you do have to core it. It's cheaper to core than it normally would be for a province of that value, but it's still a substantial expense. So for France and Spain and those kinds of people, you never have to deal with it because they don't colonize in Europe. And they could technically, I guess, conquer all the way over here and run into it by doing Asian colonization, but that's not within the normal spectrum of these guys. So these guys usually don't run into that. Russia does run into the coring cost, so it's important for them. Let's see. It's also important for Native Americans if you are playing as one of the Native American tribes for whatever reason. So anyway, so colonies do not require coring if they are distant overseas. And when you conquer territory, it is cheaper to core. It costs 50% less, and that's 50% of the base, not 50% of the modified value. There are other things. For example, administrative thing here, 25% core creation cost reduction. This stacks additively. So instead of having it be 75% of 50%, so like you multiply it and then you multiply it, it is instead just a flat reduction of 50% and then 25%. So 100% minus 50% minus 25%. That results in a total of a 75% reduction, which is huge. So this caps out at 10%, which is very small cost. But so these things stack together very effectively and you end up with these ridiculously low costing cores. So the use of that is that because while the territory isn't terribly valuable, if you're doing something like world conquest, the administrative power and diplomatic power of your empire is critically important. There's not really enough administrative power and diplomatic power to go around to get your technologies and to develop and to do the conquering at the speed that you have to do it. There's just not enough of it to go around. So when you want to make the most out of your administrative power and your diplomatic power, you want to use distant overseas. So that's for when you're doing world conquest or something like what I'm doing, which is first come, first serve. Anything like that where you need to take lots of territory regardless of how valuable it is, that's what it's for. So distant overseas, great for achievements, mediocre for increasing your actual power, and that's it. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope this has been useful.